Yo, 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 yo. Voice cracking, but it's happening. Welcome back to a fresh episode of Talking Game. I'm your host, Anthony, LT, Tony, King, Yellow Tape King, whatever you call me, lets me know what I was on. You was fucking with me. And I want to do another solo episode. This one's probably not gonna be a long one, another short episode. Um, it's college football playoff time. And in the grand scheme of football, as a football fan, it's getting sad. It's becoming a very sad day. All football fans know this season seems to go by so fast. And when you get towards the end of college football season, that lets you know that the playoffs for the NFL season and the ultimate end of football season is coming upon us. And it's a sad day for American sports. It's a sad day. Me and my mom, we always celebrate and kind of have a little issue with the end of NFL's. I mean, the end of football season. We were joking just earlier this week. It's almost service academy game, and that's when you really know we on a downhill slope towards the end. But it's all good, man. Let's just get right to it, man. I watched four of the conference championship games. Very good, very compelling. Other than the Big 12 conference championship game, where Arizona, I feel like the way that they won, the way that they stamped their ticket to the college football playoffs, it should be respected. It should be looked at and held in a higher regard than I think that the college football committee, playoff committee is going to hold them. But there's a lot of flaws. It's an imperfect system when you don't just have a, how can I put it, like how the NFL or the NBA, they have two conferences, the top 10 get in the NBA, and you got two conferences, the top seven get in the NFL. When you dealing with, I gotta say it, opinions, um, agendas, trying to make the most money, things get funny. But fuck it. We're gonna break down the 12 teams that I feel like are locked in for the playoffs. We're gonna see if I'm right. Y'all know that's part of the reason why I made this podcast is to get off some of my predictions and my forecasts for what's going on in the sports. And let's get to it. I'm the 12 teams right now that I have locked in. This isn't the order. I'm gonna give you my top 12. At the end is Boise State, Texas, Oregon, Penn State, Arizona State, Indiana, Georgia, Notre Dame, SMU, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Clemson. Now, I want you to know before the ACC championship, I did have Bama in there. Do I think Bama should have been in there? Not really, but you can make the case for them. It's a hard case to make when you think about them getting blown out by Vanderbilt, getting blown out by um, Oklahoma. Um, but you know, they're Alabama. And that's another thing I think is an issue is teams living off their name. Teams living off a very early ranking, so it's hard for them to drop down, or teams living off a win against a team that was ranked high early in the year, and that keeps them in a certain spot. But then when you get towards the end of the year and you realize that the team that they beat when that team was ranked, like let's say Texas beating Michigan, that was a big win. That was cool going to the big house. But then when you get to the end of the year and you see they 7-5, that win shouldn't hold as much weight as it seems to hold once you get towards the end of the season. But hey, like I said, you got money involved. Agendas are always going to change. Real quick though, my next teams out, group of teams out, of course, is Ole Miss, Miami, South Carolina, and Alabama now. All right. So going through the teams, I'm gonna give y'all the best wins from all of these teams. You're gonna see how it's a lot closer than people like to make it seem, and it's a lot harder than people like to make it seem. So I'm not mad all the way when I see some of these things, but It makes for good debate. And I also think that that's part of the allure of the college football playoffs now. And it's been that since they was even at a 14 format, is it sparks even more intrigue, even more debate because you have more entries that can be in it, but you're always going to have a snub. Even if they went out to 32 teams, they'd be a snub. Hell, college basketball goes out to 68 teams, and every year you have 4 or 5 teams feeling like they got snubbed out of their spot. But that's the nature of the beast. If you don't have a just pure definite top 12 because they all play each other, they're in similar conferences, and you have a committee choosing these things, you're going to have people who either deserve to be in and not in, or don't deserve to be in and make it in. But I think this is probably the best 12. All right. So let's go through these best wins from all these teams. All right. So Boise State, right? They're 11-1, conference champions. Their best win is against UNLV. Okay. So they beat UNLV twice. They beat them in the regular season as an unranked team. Let's keep that in mind. UNLV did get ranked right before the conference championship game, which I always think that's a little fishy. Something Teams seem to get ranked right before conference championship game to give other teams that extra little umph. Is that me being a conspiracy theorist? Maybe, but that's always how it seems to be. Um, I really feel like this is one of those situations where Boise State is living off of the fact that they played Oregon close in the first week of the season. They lost by 3 in Eugene. That is probably the most impressive thing if you really want to break down their resume that they can hang their hat on. Shout out to them being a conference champion. Shout out to them for doing what they were supposed to do because you can only play your schedule. But like if this was a 14 playoff, if this was BCS days, they would be 9-10 ranked and they'll be playing in the Fiesta Bowl. But we got 12 teams and we're going to the playoff. They're going to the playoff. Real quick disclaimer. If you don't know me and my opinion on the college football playoffs, I've always hated the 12 team format. I always felt like that gave too much room for teams that did not prove that they were elite or the greater teams in the regular season a chance to go on a Cinderella magical run. And I'm cool on that because more often than not, unlike basketball and football, those Cinderella teams, they normally get their ass whooped. Okay. We've seen it time and time again. Some small schools go to the New Year's Six, and you do get the random teams that win, and win big. If a team falls asleep or a team that had different aspirations end up in a big bowl and they don't really want to play. But I feel like in this college football playoff setting, where if you win, you can keep going into a championship. These smaller schools or these schools that didn't win go 11-1, 12-1, maybe even 11-2 in a Power Four conference. We're gonna see. We gonna see. But keep it rolling. Next on the list of my college football playoff locks, I have Texas, 11-2, SEC runner up in their first year in the SEC. Always super impressive when you consider what the SEC represents, their reputation, whether you feel like it's still as good as not or not, which I don't think so. And I just think that it's parity across the board with all sports because of the transfer portal. You're not having 4 or 5 stars just sit and back up teams anymore. They're going where they can play. You know what I'm saying? They're going where they can play. But 11-2, conference runner up, but their biggest win when you start looking down at their schedule was against TAMU, Texas A&M, the last week of the season. They did go on the Kyle Field and they got the win to get to the SEC championship. But Texas A&M isn't even ranked anymore. They don't have a current ranked team that they beat on their schedule. Their biggest win against Texas A&M, possibly against Michigan if you want to count that because they went into the big house early in the year when Michigan was ranked. when that was a bigger deal when you're looking at them as the national championship runner up. But now we can zoom out, like looking at the stock market when you don't need to panic. And you see, well, Michigan wasn't that good anyway. So what did Texas do that was so impressive, right? And that's going to kind of be the theme going through these teams. It's like, okay, other than, and we're going to get into Oregon there next, who really proved, that they were just so dominant. That's what causes the debate. And that makes it cool. I get it. That makes for good TV. 12 o'clock, people are going to be locked in to see who's going to be in the conference playoffs. I mean, the college football playoffs. The next team we got here, as mentioned, the Oregon Ducks, 13 and 0, conference champion, first year in the Big Ten. Crazy to think that the Pac-12, they were getting so much slack, so much BS for being a Pac-12 team. And two teams that was in the Pac-12 last year won conference championships this year and newer, what most would think more difficult conferences. Hmm, interesting. Um, you look at their resume, they've beaten three playoff locks. Two of these, I guess I got to do a little foreshadowing of where I'm going, but they beat Boise State, they beat Ohio State, they beat Penn State, they went on the road, beat Wisconsin. Um, like I said, they ran the table. This is the teams that you want to see in the playoffs. These are the teams that deserve a bye. These are the teams that, you just you expect to be there. Other teams, I don't feel like they really earned the right. And then that goes into my next team. And I swear, this team is the one reason, the sole reason why I do not want a 12-team playoff. And last night they proved it. And this team is Penn State. Penn State 11 and 2, conference runner up. Sweet. Last year, they go to the Rose Bowl. They enjoy the Tournament of Roses, and I have no problem with that. This year, they're in the playoffs with a chance to win a chip because you get extra lives in this situation, in this scenario. Okay. 11 and 2. If you look at their schedule, their best win was against Illinois. They play Ohio State. They step up in competition. They take a L. At home, by the way. They play Oregon, neutral field, Big Ten heavy, neutral site. I don't think Oregon is, I got a feeling Penn State is closer than Oregon to Indiana. And no, can't cut it. I always said that Penn State is that second best team, I mean third best team, maybe fourth best team every year in the Big Ten. Congratulations, you made it up to the second best team this year. But I just don't feel like teams like that should make it to the level of a playoff caliber in college football. But that's me. Then next, we have another team new to a conference, but it don't matter. We here to win, and that's Arizona State. First of all, shout out to Arizona State because I did not realize that the Big 12, which has 16 teams, maybe change to the Big 16. I don't know, but the Big 12 has 16 teams, and they were expected to finish 16. So them even making it to the conference championship was a big deal. But oh my gosh, not only did they made it, they put foot to ass. Okay. Iowa State, I thought it was going to be a back and forth game. It's 7-3, Iowa State up. Um, who scores? Arizona State scores. It's 10-7. Arizona State up. Iowa State scores a field goal. I'm like, okay, it's going to be back and forth, back and forth. I go around the corner to Chili's during the second quarter real quick. It's halftime at Chili's, and all I see is the score running up, running up. Shout out to Arizona State, man. Two big ranked wins on their schedule. BYU, who is still ranked 18, Iowa State, who was ranked 16 yesterday, and they should still be ranked after this week. I mean, of course, they're gonna drop after losing by 35, but I'm not mad at that at all. Next we have Indiana. Another team. It just don't make sense, but you gotta feel the games now. You gotta feel the brackets. 10 and 1. Didn't make a conference championship game. Their biggest win is against Michigan. They're living off that. They fed off the bottom of the Big Ten. They got lucky. They avoided the Penn States. They avoided the Oregons and even the Illinois, and shout out to them. They did what they were supposed to do. But 10-1, your best win against Michigan. Did you prove that you're an elite team? I'm not gonna say they did yet. Now, the good thing about the playoffs is you have a chance to redeem yourself and prove that you're an elite team. But then you think about it as like, well, depending on how this shapes out with conference champions, not going to the conference championship almost is an advantage because you have an extra week to prepare, get your team healthy, where teams who are in the conference championship game, they're playing. But I don't know. Things that got to get figured out, man. Things that got to get figured out. Georgia is the next team on my list. Another team that I have no issue with being in the conference college football playoffs. Another team that well, guess I got to do a little more foreshadowing. Has been three playoff teams. They beat Texas twice. They basically, oh my gosh, almost shut out Clemson week one. They beat Tennessee pretty handily. Um, and they really had a tough schedule. You go to Tuscaloosa, you go to UT, both. You go to Texas. You got Ole Miss, who was one of the next teams out. Clemson, neutral site, dominate that week one. Yeah, I have no issues. I remember after watching Texas, Georgia, round one, just thinking to myself, this is the best team in the country. Even after losing to Alabama, it's like they're still the best team in the country. Even after losing to Ole Miss, I felt like they was the best team in the country because that gauntlet was crazy, and they handle business. Ooh. I'm interested to see if they penalize Georgia for losing a quarterback. Not as bad as Florida State because they won and they're too high up. And that's the good thing about a 12-team playoffs is like even if you drop them, they're not the 13th best team in the country. But I wonder if they're going to hold out any injury reports to until after 12 to make sure they get that bye and what goes with that. Next, I have Notre Dame. 11-1, America's darling, college football's darling, Catholics. Oddly enough, their two big wins are against the service academies. Army and Navy both were undefeated when they met. Navy was ranked when they met, and they just blew them off the board. Army, similar situation. They beat them pretty good. But Army did win their conference title, which helps Notre Dame because they beat a conference champion. Um, they did go down to Texas A&M. They did win that big game week one. I wonder if they're going to be penalized for not being in a conference and being a conference champion. Um, I don't think you should. I mean, you gotta take that in stride with Notre Dame. You understand they're independent, and you honestly just gotta look at them as a good team, and just look at their body of work and what they've been since that upset loss at home to Northern Illinois, and they've been arguably the best team in the country. I really ain't got nothing bad to say about Notre Dame, even as a Miami Hurricane fan. Uh, Next lock I have is SMU. Similar situation. They really needed yesterday to have like a signature win, a stamp, that we deserve to be here to deny a lot of the questioning. Or I wouldn't say deny, but to silence a lot of the questioning around them as a program. But they played well. I think they did their job to get in. I think they did enough to get in, I should say. And enough is playing close. If the game would have ended the way that it started, with Clemson basically running away, would have opened up the door. Like I really think would have opened the door for Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Miami, one of those teams to have more of an argument because that would have put SMU as a three-loss team, even though they're in the conference title. And their best win right now is Louisville and Pitt. They will at least have that ranked win on top of being a conference champion. But I don't think that teams should be punished for losing in the conference championship while teams get to sit at home and watch the conference championship. That's just me. Um, Next we got Ohio State, 10-2. Ryan Day needs this for his job security. Um, I believe me and Marcus, we were talking through text when they lost to Michigan. If they don't win the Natty, he's out of there. You can't lose four straight to Michigan. You definitely can't lose to Michigan on a year like this where it's a down year. Um, it costs you the Big Ten championship. Potentially can cost you a playoff spot, but they do have a gem, a feather in their cap, and that's the win against Penn State. So they do have a top five win, and that was on the road. And it was kind of dominant fashion. Like it wasn't a pretty game, it wasn't a run score up game, but they just physically dominated that game. So I can roll with Ohio State. And you know how I go. It's about the brands. It's about the money. You gotta roll with that. Um Next on my list is Tennessee. 10-2. Once again, man, you go looking through their schedule, you look through their resume, and I mean, the Oklahoma win was supposed to be big. Biggest thing they got is Alabama. Not mad at that. It's better than some of these teams. It's better than the Texas A&M win. It's better than the UNLV win. It's better than a Louisville Pitt win, but that's all you got. So like I said, when you start looking at these resumes, you start looking at these teams, you look at who they beat, who they played. Ain't nobody out here just going through juggernauts other than Oregon. And that's why they will be the number one overall seed. And then last but not least, um, this is where the intrigue of the college football playoffs is going to captivate people and keep people tuning in and on the edge of their seats is when you have these situations like Clemson, where you're just mulling around, you're doing just enough, you're doing just enough. You got to think last week at halftime or the second quarter, Miami's up 21-0. And it looks like it's Miami SMU going to be in the ACC championship, and Clemson has no chance. My Hurricanes blow it, and Clemson gets in, and they dominate in the beginning. They faltered towards in the second half, but they do just enough to get the thrilling and dramatic victory, and they should be in the playoffs. Now, do they deserve a bye? Hell yeah, they deserve a bye. Hell yeah, they deserve a bye. And I'm gonna get into that when I go through my order of my top teams. Um, Actually, I don't think Clemson deserves a bye. I'm sorry. That's another team that I want to get into about the bye. But anyway, looking at Clemson, look, they played Georgia tight the first. Well, no, they actually got the doors blown off of them by Georgia. They lost to South Carolina. Um, so some of these losses, when you look at it, is like the other team. Are they equipped to play against the big dogs? Yeah, they've done enough to win, but that's why I don't like the 12-team playoffs. The 12-team format is just it opens up way too much because Clemson has three losses. I get it, they're a conference champion, and that should get you in. But are they one of the 12 best teams? It's a lot of debate that can be had with that. But they did what they were supposed to do. They handled business, and they got their biggest win of the year just last night against SMU in thrilling fashion. Shout out to Clemson, man. Um, I think it was, no, I know it had to be 2015 in the fall. I went up to Charleston, South Carolina, saw, I don't even know, some little bar wing spot, and it was Clemson down. And I swear Clemson been balling out of control ever since. All right, so I'm gonna give you my order of teams, and how I feel like the college football playoffs should be ranked. Okay, so my number one overall seed will be Oregon. Like I say, only undefeated team, in my field, ran the gauntlet. New to a conference, didn't matter. Beat three playoff teams. No argument. I think that's the consensus number one team. My number two team would be Georgia. Um, Also, three playoff teams they've already defeated. They beat one of them twice, Texas. All right. My number three seed would be Arizona State. Look, it's no way that Boise State, a group of five team, should be ahead of Arizona State after these playoff seedings come out, playoff rankings come out. If so, they should just do away with the idea of Power Five and Group of Five and just call it football. Just call it NCAA. Because what's the reward for being at a Power Four school and winning the conference championship if somebody from a group of five who played lesser competition, and it shows, it's just the proof in the pudding. They only played one, well, beat one ranked team. And that was at the end of the year. What, how do they get the benefit of the doubt? Shouldn't be able to happen. My number four team, surprisingly, is Notre Dame. Like I said, they've been dominant since the Northern Illinois loss. So I have no problem with them not winning a conference championship. Like I said, hell, they beat a conference champion, and if they were officially in the ACC, they probably would win that. See something? Did Notre Dame play SMU? I think so. I think. Okay. I think SMU first loss was to. Let me look. Let me look, man. I'm sorry, guys. I should have had this together, but I was just wondering. SMU first loss was to BYU, which was Arizona State. You know what I'm saying? Which makes Arizona State look even better. But yeah. So I'm cool with Notre Dame being in the top four. Now, my next team would be Clemson. You got to put a conference champion in. Do I think they're better than Tennessee, Ohio State, even Penn State? No, I don't. But I do think that conference champions should get something for playing the extra game, the potential, the potential injuries. Um, they earned it. No matter how it shook out, they earned the right to be a conference champion. So that should be a golden ticket, so to speak. Next, gotta go Boise State, another conference champion, 11-1. I'm not mad at that. And then put them in any order you want. I guess you would go Penn State, but I wouldn't even go Penn State since they lost to Ohio State. I'm going Ohio State, who beat Indiana and Penn State. Forgot to say that, beat two playoff teams. Then I'm going Penn State. I see that's when it gets tricky. You can put Tennessee, Penn State, Indiana, SMU in a bag, shake it up, close your eyes, pull a team out, and just place them after that. I really feel like they're in that mumbo jumbo group of teams that, in my world, they wouldn't even fucking be in. But you got to fill the spots. And shout out to those teams for being able to get their fan bases to the first ever 12 team format for the playoffs. Um, That's all I got for you guys, man. Like I say, if they, in my world, the perfect world would be a 16 playoffs, and my six teams would be Oregon, Georgia, Arizona State, Notre Dame, Clemson, Boise State. That'd be perfect. You let Oregon and Georgia get a bye. You got Ohio, you get Arizona State, Notre Dame, to play against Clemson, Boise State, however you want to shake that up. You go Peach Bowl, Notre Dame, Clemson. You go Fiesta Bowl, Arizona State, Boise State, to see who plays Oregon and Georgia in the next round. That would be my playoff format. But who am I? Just just King, man, just Anthony. holding it down on the podcast, man. But I appreciate y'all for listening. Appreciate y'all for checking me out. It's Talking Game, baby.